Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Performance Anxiety Podcast on the Pantheon Podcast Network. I am your host, Mark, and I want to thank our sponsor, AKG, for sending us their Podcaster Essentials Kit. If you've ever thought about starting your own podcast, the AKG Podcaster Essentials Kit is the highest quality way to do it. I would like to welcome singer-songwriter Sarah McQuaid to the show. Sarah has been singing since joining a children's choir and was touring before hitting double digits. Even in school, she looked at singing like it was her vocation. And that shouldn't be surprising once you discover that both her parents were artists and one of her relatives was a founder of the ACLU and won a Nobel Peace Prize. She discusses her love of traditional music and how that led to her accidentally writing a book. She also describes the similarities between writing a song and having children, even if that song is sung in hillbilly Gaelic. She has a new live album out, the St. Buryan Sessions, and it's recorded in a church and it's just her, but it sounds so lush. Pick it up wherever you get music. There's also a limited vinyl release, so grab that while you can. Follow her on Instagram at Sarah McQuaid Music and check out her site, sarahmcquaid.com. Follow us at Performance ANX on the socials, and you can help support the show at either ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety or performanceanx.threadless.com. And now please enjoy my wonderful chat with Sarah McQuaid on Performance Anxiety, part of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Yeah, just want me to say, like, this is Sarah McQuaid, and you're listening to the Performance Anxiety Podcast. Something like that, like a study type thing, or is it? No, it's an intro to the podcast, isn't it? So it's not a station ID. It's I'm Sarah McQuaid. I've got a new album coming out, and I'm delighted to talk about it on the Performance Anxiety Podcast, that kind of thing. Yeah? Does that work? Oh, okay. All right. I'm Sarah McQuaid, and my new album, The St. Buryan Sessions, is just about to be released, and it's a real honor to be invited to talk about it on the Performance Anxiety Podcast.
All right. Ooh, nice library.
Oh, thanks.
Man, I'm jealous. I'd love to have something like that. Right now, I just have bare walls.
That's all right.
Bare walls and a bunch of booze behind me.
Oh, very good.
So,
excellent.
That's about...
Always good.
That's how my morning's starting, I guess. So thank you so much for joining me. I mean, I love getting these international ones. These are a lot of fun.
Oh, good.
Just for some reason, it's just the fact that you're, halfway across the world is just, and we're sitting here talking and doing a podcast about your music is just, to me, it's just fascinating.
Yeah, technology is wonderful.
It can be. It can also, when your Wi-Fi doesn't work, it can also be very frustrating. What I like to do to start off everything is really find out about how you got into music in the first place. And I was doing some research, and you have quite an unusual history, familially and growing up. You were born in Madrid, is that right?
Yeah.
Your mom was an art critic. Your father was an artist, and
she was an artist at the time. She became an art critic later on, but when she was in Spain, she was still just making art rather than writing about it. She got more into the writing about it later.
Okay, but you also have a very noteworthy great aunt.
Yeah, so, Jane Addams.
And she won a Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah, she won she founded the American Civil Liberties Union, won the Nobel Peace Prize, was a big campaigner for peace and social justice, and wrote lots of books.
That's amazing. So that you've got quite a lot in your history of art and activism, and not a whole lot of accountants.
No, more's the pity. Yeah.
So
although I have a bunch of medical cousins.
Oh.
So clearly there's some practical. My entire family are all either doctors or musicians. That seems to be pretty much it. The whole extended family.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite the dichotomy there.
Yeah, it is. I don't know how that happened.
Well, when you were growing up, I mean, your music is based in a lot of traditional folk styles. What were you listening to? I mean, were you a kid listening to that kind of stuff, or were you?
I was actually, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my mother was kind of a 1960s folky kind of person, and she used to play the guitar and sing, and she used to play folk songs herself. And then what was she listening to? She was listening to Joan Baez and, Peggy Seeger and Pete Seeger and all these other, and all these kind of more obscure folk musicians. I remember there was one I used to really like when I was little, and it was one of those really thick they're smaller than an LP, but they're like a record, and they're really sort of heavy vinyl.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It was called Minstrel of the Appalachians was the name of the record. Oh, and Gene Ritchie. She was a big fan of Gene Ritchie too. So I grew up listening to all that stuff as a little kid, and also listened to a lot of the Beatles and a lot of Beatles, a lot of Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, people like that as well. I would hear, and then I belonged to the Chicago Children's Choir as well. At the age of 6 or 7 when I joined the choir, so I got exposed to a wildly eclectic kind of selection of music, from, very strict kind of really old classical music to kind of contemporary. We did the odd show tune. We did. We did all kinds of, and then mad kind of contemporary music. People like settings of poems by E. Cummings, where everything was in lowercase.
Right.
But it was really, really eclectic, and then also lots of, again, certain folk songs from different countries. We did some Spanish folk songs and all kinds of stuff. So, and that was a really good early introduction to touring as well, because we used to go on these big USA-wide tours, going big long distances in a tour bus and performing every day, and with
an entire children's choir. That's God, I can't imagine going on tour with a whole bunch of 8-year-olds.
I know. It's but I have to say, we were pro. We were and we were expected to be pro, and we'd have TV appearances and things like that, and school concerts where you had to go and perform in schools, and. And man, if you behaved badly, you'd be out, And also, you didn't go on tour. It wasn't the entire choir that went on tour. There were groups chosen to go on tour.
Oh, okay.
So you had to be of a certain level and of a certain professionalism, even at age 8. I think I was 9 when I went on my first tour with the choir, and I'd been in the choir for like 3 years at that point.
Wow. So you were singing, obviously, at an early age.
Yeah.
When did you start picking up instruments? Was guitar your first instrument?
Piano was first, actually. I started playing piano when I was still in nursery school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when I was like 4 years old, I went to the Child Care Center in Hyde Park in Chicago. Wow. And there was a piano in there, and we had a piano at home as well. But I just really loved the piano, and one of the teachers at the Child Care Center started just giving me piano lessons voluntarily.
Oh, wow.
I remember these beginning piano books and stuff, and then I'd practice more at home. And my mother would show me stuff too, but I was much more willing to be taught by my nursery school teacher than I was with my mother. Somehow when your mother's teaching you music, you just don't want to know about it.
Exactly.
I found out about that when I tried to teach my kids to play music, and it was a disaster. They just didn't want to know.
Something about parents. I know that your kids just don't want to have anything to do with what you want to teach them.
No.
I read that you ended up going to college in France. Now, were you performing this entire time up until college? Or
Yeah, pretty well. Well, not kind of in a right. I was performing with the choir until when I was 13. We left Chicago and moved to Washington, D.C.
Oh, hey, it's 90 minutes from where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where are you based?
I'm in Winchester.
Oh, okay, in Virginia.
Yeah, I'm in Winchester, Virginia. So I'm like 75 miles, 90 minutes due west of D.C.
But you're in the mountains, aren't you?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
We're close to the border of West Virginia. But we're right outside the Northern Virginia area. So, all right. So back to, you moved to D.C.
Yeah, moved to DC. And that was kind of when I was getting to be a teenager and listening to a lot of Joni Mitchell and getting more into writing songs. And I used to get up and sing them at school assemblies and stuff like that. You know? So in the morning at the start of school. And
that's something else. I don't think as a teenager I could have gotten up in front of my school and done anything. I didn't have that kind of confidence in myself. I don't even know if I still do.
I guess the choir taught me that because when you've been performing from like the age of 7, it's kind of second nature and you don't even think about it.
That's a good point.
It doesn't occur to you that this is kind of a weird thing to do or that you're putting yourself forward in any way. It's kind of, you basically feel like it's your job. You know, and you feel a sense of work and responsibility at a really early age. And maybe that's kind of a heavy thing to put on a kid, but I never minded it. I was always quite happy knowing that singing was my job, and I just had to get up and do it whether I felt like it or not. You know,
jeez.
You know that it was. I think it was kind of a healthy attitude to grow up with. You know, I mean, I know kids. I've got a little cousin. Well, he's my cousin's son, who here in England, my cousin by marriage, who's been singing in a cathedral choir, and like that, he had the same kind of really, you know, super pro kind of inculcation that I did as a kid, and I don't think it's a bad thing, really.
No.
But yes, so standing up in front of the school assembly was kind of nothing. I'd sung solos on TV, you know, which is a lot more intimidating.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was fine. Although, on the other hand, when you're in the school assembly, I always think performing in front of your friends, people who actually know you, is always a little scarier than performing in front of strangers.
That's a good point.
But yeah, speaking of performance anxiety, you know, on the podcast here, but. So let's see. So I was doing songs at school assemblies and stuff, and then when I went to Haverford College, and then going to France was my junior year abroad thing.
Okay.
You know, that thing where you go off and study abroad for a year in your third year of college. So at Haverford, I was doing a similar sort of thing. I was involved in theater productions and singing. I had a singing role in a theater production, and and I'd get up and do my songs at various kind of, I don't know what to call them, sort of talent show type things. You know, They weren't called that. I forget what they were called. And then when I went to France, I just started asking around if there was any band that wanted a singer-guitarist. And somebody said, oh, there's this trad Irish band and their singer-guitarist is just leaving the country. So they need somebody pretty quickly because they have gigs. And I went and sang and played for them and heard them play and really took to the music in a big way and liked it and started performing with them.
Oh, wow. So were you performing traditional songs at that point? I mean, did you know a lot of them?
Yeah, that was all trad. That was all. So I kind of went from being a singer-songwriter in secondary school and college on a very kind of amateur level, to performing on the professional level as a traditional musician, not doing my own songs, but doing trad Irish material, folk material.
So you kind of went backwards in that regard.
So I went backwards then. And then when I'm skipping wildly ahead chronologically, but then for it's only really in the sort of third, fourth, and fifth albums that I kind of started recasting myself as a singer-songwriter and not really doing much in the way of traditional and folk stuff because I just got really absorbed in writing songs. And there you go. But anyway, you continue. Sorry, I'm giving long answers to short questions.
No, that's fine. That's what this whole thing's about. That's the kind of stuff that I want to know. All right, so you moved to France, and that's when you started doing the traditional stuff. And then you eventually moved to Ireland for work.
Yeah.
So was that right after college, or did you come back to the U.S.?
Well, actually, it wasn't right after college. It was. I graduated from college in '87, and we moved to Ireland in '94. Okay. So it was 7 years actually. I was working for 7 years in a music shop in Philadelphia called Vintage Instruments, and performing with a trad Irish band based in Philadelphia. One member of which was my first husband, Noel McQuaid, whose name I still have. So,
okay.
I'm married to a different Irishman now.
How did you end up in music journalism?
Well, what happened there was I moved to Ireland. I wrote my guitar book, which was kind of an accident as well.
Really? How do you write a book by accident?
Well, I was proofreading a friend's book. I had a friend who'd written a tutor on how to play the bodhrán, the Irish frame drum.
Okay.
And we went into the publisher's office to look at the final proofs on screen before it went to print. And I was proofing the book, and I'd really got into playing guitar in the dadgad tuning at that point, D-A-D-G-A-D, which is an alternative tuning that a lot of trad Irish players use.
Yes.
And so it was as we were leaving and saying goodbye to the publisher that I just sort of said over my shoulder, "Oh, if you ever want to tutor book on playing dadgad tuned guitar, let me know." And he said, "Come back, sit down." I've been looking for somebody to write a dadgad book for ages.
Wow.
Can you do it? How soon can you have it ready? And so, so suddenly I had a book contract, and
wow.
And so I wrote this guitar book, which is still in print years later. It's on Hal Leonard Publishing, and it's still sold in music shops around the world. I get royalty statements, every quarter from Hal Leonard, and people are still buying the thing, which is amazing because to my mind it's pretty out of date.
Yeah.
I stupidly included a discography of it of kind of key albums to listen to if you're into playing dadgad guitar. And the book was published in 1995, so the discography is way out of date.
It needs a little updating.
No, it does. And also it's written in, I was still pretty juvenile at that point, I think, when I wrote the book, and I was really prescriptive and kind of, you must do this, because when you're young, you think you're right about everything.
But that kind of fits in with Hal Leonard, doesn't it?
I guess. If I was to write the book now, I probably would modify a lot of what I said, I don't think I'm right about everything anymore. I think I'm wrong about most things. Growing up is basically learning all the things that you're wrong about that you thought you were right about when you were younger.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm going through all that right now. And my kids are telling me how wrong I am about so many things.
Oh, yeah. Well, I get told that by my kids, too. My kids are teenagers. You don't realize until you have kids the extent to which they're really nothing to do with you. You just kind of, you make them happen somehow. And then it's just created this thing. And I get, and songs can feel that way, too. I've made that analogy before, but I think it's true. They kind of, you bring them into the world and they cease to be yours.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, they just become their own thing almost immediately. It's just, but it's amazing to watch.
Yeah. True.
It's like nothing, well, unless maybe, writing, I haven't written a song, so I can't make that analogy, but I can understand that one.
Well, it's a lot like it, it's really painful to produce as well. Of course, you don't know about that.
So all right. Anyway. So the thing that's really interesting to me is that you've done, like, your first couple albums were a lot of traditional songs, including singing in Gaelic, I believe.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Is that something you knew, or did you have to learn it to play with the traditional Irish bands?
Well, I'd learned some songs in Irish, and just phonetically, and then it was actually a really good friend of mine, Irlo Leonard, who's quite a well-known Irish singer. He had a band. He was in the Afro-Celt sound system for a long time.
Wow!
So he was the main singer in the Afro-Celt sound system when they first appeared.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
And he's from the kind of the region down in Cork and Kerry where they speak a very distinctive variety of Irish there. They have their own kind of dialect.
Right.
And it was Irla who suggested that I sing this particular song, which was actually written by his aunt. He was descended from a woman who wrote a bunch of songs, and so he suggested that I sing. Was she his aunt or his great aunt? I forget. Anyway, she was related to him, and so he suggested I sing this song, and I said, "Oh, I'd be very nervous about singing in Irish on an album." And he said, "Oh, I'll coach you in the pronunciation." So he did. He coached me in the pronunciation. But I had some other Irish-speaking friends who were like from Dublin, who grew up in Irish-speaking families in Dublin and in the west of Ireland. And they thought it was hilarious because what I'd basically done is learned to sing. If you can imagine, the equivalent would be a French person maybe learning to an American song from somebody from like Alabama or something. I was singing this really kind of deep woods, the Irish equivalent of a deep woods accent, And, yeah,
that's fantastic.
And my Irish-speaking friends from Dublin thought it was very amusing to hear me sing. So, but anyway, my lesson.
Yeah. So, did you change your pronunciation for the songs on the second album?
No, I stopped singing Irish. Although in I sang in other languages though, like not the second album. I don't think I had any, but the third album.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, the third album, which is called The Plum Tree and the Rose, which I recorded after I'd moved to England, and I got really into kind of Elizabethan music and medieval music. And there's a song called Sant Fibalia ni Prezada, which is in an obsolete language, so nobody can.
Oh, okay.
It's an old Occitan, which is a language they spoken very widely in the south of France back in the 13th century when the song is from. That's
one of my favorite songs on that album.
Magical song, isn't it?
It is amazing. And so I mistakenly thought that was some kind of Gaelic or Irish thing. Okay, so glad you cleared that one up.
Old Occitan.
But between those two albums, you did your album, I Won't Go Home Till Morning. At the same time, you also did an album with Zoe Pollock, Mama. And both those albums have deep Americana roots. What was going on back then that you switched from going traditional Irish to 2 albums worth of Americana stuff in the same year?
You're the first person who's ever described the Mama album as an Americana album, which I'm flattered by. That it's great, but it's funny that it hadn't occurred to me because Zoe is English, and it's all songs that I co-wrote with her, and so I thought of that as being, I don't know, quite a different thing, kind of, I don't know, neo-folk, maybe call it, or alternative, or
I get like
call it a lot here.
I'd say I hear a lot of like Western Americana kind of stuff, like
yeah, I suppose because it was songs that I co-wrote, a lot of me came into it, and so it became kind of, that maybe gave it more of an Americana feel,
Open your eyes, welcome the morning light, look at the trees, hear morning melodies, liquid sunshine, liquid
what happened? Right. I'd made the first album, the mostly trad Irish one, because I'd been living in Ireland and learning all these trad songs and really wanted to record them. And then I made the second album right after my mother died. And so it's all songs that I associated with her. There are a couple of songs that I actually wrote about her on that album, and one of which I've just re-recorded on the new album. And then there were, a lot of songs that she used to sing, sort of old American folk songs that I learned from her. So that's how that one came about. And I'd recorded that actually before I moved to England, just before I moved, but it didn't come out until I'd made the move. Then I moved to England, and I met Zoe because our kids were going to the same tiny little school in far west Cornwall. A very small school, only about 20 odd kids in the whole school. Wow. So you got to know parents. It was a real kind of family thing. And it wasn't until I got to be friends with Zoe that I found out she was this massive pop star in England. She'd had a huge hit single, was in the top 5 of the UK charts for 16 weeks, and was the big kind of dance hit, kind of get everybody out on the dance floor at the end of the night, and all the discos in Ibiza and all those places. In 1991 was her big hit. It was called Sunshine on a Rainy Day. She was on, you can still look up YouTube and see the video of her on Top of the Pops, right, singing, and dancing. And, but I didn't know I'd probably have been much more intimidated if I'd known all that before I got to be friends with her. But I only kind of found it out later. And we started writing songs together. And that's what really got me into the songwriting, partly because Zoe taught me so much about songwriting. I mean, I really... I learned so much from her. I'm really indebted to her. I mean, basically, the main thing I learned from her is that there are no rules. Yeah. I learned that you can, as long as there's a structure, it doesn't have to have. I kind of came into it with songwriting with the attitude that, you need a verse and a middle eight and a chorus. And Zoe taught me you don't need any of that. As long as the song has a structure, it doesn't matter what that structure is. It can be anything. Wow. Obviously, it needs to go somewhere as a song. Right. People need it needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yeah. But it doesn't need 2 verses and a chorus. So that was a real revelation. And then just writing with her was fantastic. I mean, the songs were very much collaborations. And I should add that I learned a lot also about songwriting from Jerry O'Byrne, who produced my first 3 albums, and we started co-writing as well. But I co-wrote with Jerry after I co-wrote with Zoe. I guess it was co-writing with Zoe that made me sort of realize, a song can really be greater than the sum of the parts kind of thing if you're working with somebody else. And so on the 3rd album, which came out after the Mama album, there are several songs that I co-wrote with Jerry O'Byrne as well. And I learned so much from both of them.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. I want to take a minute and talk about our sponsor, Tiesta Tea. Tiesta is a tea company on a mission to create loose leaf tea beverages with premium ingredients that taste good and do good. Each tea is blended for one of 5 categories, so you can energize, slenderize, boost antioxidants, boost immunity, and relax. My current favorite is Blueberry Wild Chow. When I was growing up, my dad always told me, once you go loose, you never go bagged. And you know what? He was right. Go to tiestatea.com and use the promo code Anxiety15 at checkout to get 15% off your order. You think you know tea? You haven't tried Tiesta Tea.
Sorry, what's the question I'm answering? Yeah, Americana. Yeah, Americana to the Mama album. But yeah, we were just writing what we felt like writing without any particular views as to genre or what audience we were aiming for or anything. Which I also think is a really good thing.
Absolutely.
It's a good idea to try and aim for any set audience or genre style.
That'll almost guarantee failure.
Yeah.
But so I was looking at the tracks. I mean, I love West Virginia boys because I live so close to the West Virginia border that that's basically the advice I gave my daughters. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
quite a
that's
reputation around
my
here.
mother. She used to sing that. So.
Yeah, West Virginia guys have quite a reputation around here.
When it comes to courting, he'll whisper in your ear. First it's honey lamb, and then it's deer. After you're married, no such thing. Get up and fix my breakfast, you good for nothing thing. Get up and fix my breakfast, you good for nothing thing. Come on, all you Virginia guys, and listen to my noise. Don't you mess around with West Virginia boys.
But I also love the song East Virginia. I've heard a few different artists do it, and I love your version.
Oh, thank
I
you.
do love that song just in general, but your version is fantastic.
I was born in East Virginia, North Carolina. I did wrong. There I met a fair, pretty maiden.
And one thing I've noticed in having some folk artists on and with you and others, a lot of the traditional songs are about loss and sorrow and death. And with your delivery, your voice, and it's just the songs that I've heard a lot in the past. When you're doing them, I'm at work listening to these things and I'm tearing up, and people are looking at me. And I'm like, I'm not crying, it's allergies. But it's your delivery is just so amazing. It's so heartfelt and so it seems so honest, and that's what I love about your music. And I looked up some reviews, and I think I've saw some of these, and I know you've seen them, but I have a question about how people review your voice, I guess, because your vocals have been called chocolatey with a cinnamon roasted smokiness. And I'm really not even sure what to do with these, but it's making me hungry.
I'm very same. It's like, yeah, whatever, I'll take it.
I imagine food references to your voice are good.
Yeah.
You don't want to sound, her voice is like, a can of tuna. I mean, that would be bad. But if there's also a voice as thick and soft as fur.
Yeah, Elmore said that.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
But they're accurate, and I think maybe that's what draws me to your music and your vocals is just that it's so warm and inviting, and even with the sad songs, it's just I can't stop listening. There's just a wonderful quality to it, even if it is reminiscent of food.
Yeah, I think what I get told a lot is I have a very distinctive voice. I really liked, there's a recent review that I'm quoting at the top of my website now that says I'm one of the most instantly recognizable voices in current music. And it's true. I don't know. I don't sound like anybody else.
No.
I sound, it's quite a unique voice, whether you like it or not, or whether it's a good, bad, or indifferent voice. It's definitely a unique voice. It's not. And people seem to really respond to it,
I think my favorite review though is ausgesprochen wohl durchdachte Songs und Melodien, das ist subtile, feinsinnige und ausstuffelte Arbeit. I think I said that correctly.
The only word I recognized was Arbeit, which is work. Yeah. Oh, did I translate it, or did somebody translate it? I
think it's translated as exquisitely thoughtful songs and melodies expressing subtlety, sensitivity, and meticulous craftsmanship.
Craftsmanship. Yeah, that would be the art. Yeah.
It could have been my delivery, maybe my pronunciation of the words. Maybe I was like an Alabama German.
Sure. My German is terrible. So
my German
I speak
is not
a little German. I attempt to speak German on stage, but it's usually it's for comedy effect. People laugh up. All I have to do is say "Das Buch ist auf dem Tisch," and people fall apart laughing. So
I don't even know what that means.
means the book is on the table.
Oh.
That's all I have to say on stage.
Well, my German's non-existent, so it's much better than mine. I do the Conan O'Brien method of speaking German. I just throw things out, and occasionally it sounds like a word.
Yeah, also good. Also good. It's a really useful word in German that I learned. I tour a lot in Germany, so every time I did before everything, but I had been touring in Germany for years, and every time I go there, I learn a new word, and a wonderful new word I learned. It's genau, which just basically means, yep, okay, exactly, yep, that's it. Just so, genau. So if you're having a conversation with somebody in German, all you have to do is say genau, 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 genau. And yeah, it's great.
That is good to know.
That'll do you. That's all the word you need.
So your third album, you end up doing more of your own material.
Yeah. What happened was I'd actually started recording that album before. I'd started I'd started recording the album, and I think I had just around the time I was finishing the Mama album. I'm not 100% sure the chronology of this, but anyway, I'd started recording the album, and I originally conceived it as being very much sort of all that Elizabethan medieval stuff, and maybe one of my own songs or two, you know?
Okay.
And I actually went over to Ireland, and I recorded the whole, what I thought was a whole album. And it wasn't quite ready, it wasn't quite finished, and I went back home again, and then I started writing a whole bunch of songs. I just started really getting into songwriting, and I wound up going back to Ireland again 2 years later and recording all these new songs and ditching half of what I'd recorded previously and sticking all the new stuff on. And it's amazing that it holds together as an album at all, but it does seem to. But yeah, so that album is basically my transition kind of from folk singer to songwriter.
But you do a really cool John Martin cover, though.
Oh yeah,
I love John Martin.
I always believe in having at least one cover song on all of my albums. I just think it's really good to try and, I don't know, feel your way into another songwriter's head. So actually, I've got 2 new cover songs on the new album, which I hadn't recorded before. They're completely new songs for me, and I'm really glad that I did one of them because it's by Michael Chapman, who died yesterday, which I don't want to talk about because I'll start bursting into tears.
Right.
But anyway, but yeah, I'm glad I recorded his song.
Yeah. The song Lift You Up and Let You Fly really hit me kind of hard because that's kind of where, and I'm sure you're at that same point right now. That's where we're at with our kids.
It is, yeah.
And it's just, that was one of the ones that I was talking about where I would just kind of like, my eyes started getting wet and I'm just like, I can't be doing this at work.
Yeah.
So.
If your feathers fail you, I'll try to catch you as you fall. But when I set you free and you fly away from me, I know you might not come back at all. Lift you up and let you fly.
Then the next album, Walking Into White.
Yeah.
I have a question about this for you. This has to be on purpose. You went from one Cornwall to another to record that album. That had to be on purpose.
It was kind of an accident, but
Really?
I thought it was so cool. Yeah. At the point when I made when I was starting to think about Walking Into White, I'd made 3 albums with Jerry O'Byrne as producer, and he'd done a beautiful job producing albums for me, and I really loved co-writing with him as well, so much that I got him to co-write songs for me for the 4th and 5th albums, which he didn't produce, but I still wanted him involved as a co-writer.
Okay.
But I thought it's really time for me to try working with a different producer and maybe kind of work with somebody who's not from a folk background, work with somebody who'd come at it from a completely different direction, and just shake me up and get me to do things in a different way. Because I kind of felt like if I make another album, I'll start getting it the way I've done before. I'm going to start getting into a rut. And I really didn't want to get into a rut. I wanted to keep it fresh and new. And so I asked my cousin Adam Pierce if he would produce my new album. And Adam is a really fantastic multi-instrumentalist. He's one of these annoying people who can play everything really well.
He's not the doctor.
No. He's a musician, trumpet, piano, guitar, all sorts of different instruments. And he plays with a really cool indie band called the Swirlies. And he also has his own band, which is called Mice Parade, which is an anagram of his name. Mice Parade is an anagram of Adam Pierce. And he works with a record label called Fat Cat, which again is a very cool kind of indie label. Yeah. And so very, very different kind of approach to music from me. And so he very kindly agreed to produce my fourth album, Walking into White, and I went over to the USA to record it. And he happened at that point to have his studio in Cornwall, New York. He's moved since. He's outside Hudson, New York now.
Okay.
But yeah, he was in Cornwall, New York. And in fact, my album was the last album to be recorded there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I was really happy that I got a chance to record there in that studio.
So was he the influence that brought in some electric instrumentation, some piano and horns? Was that his influence?
Yeah. Well, I'd had horns on the previous album. I'd had keyboards in all previous albums. In fact, yeah, I think that. But yeah, certainly some of the he definitely gave the album a much more electric sound. He played electric guitar on a couple of tracks. I hadn't started playing electric yet. That came with the fifth album.
Okay.
But yeah, Adam, he was really into his kind of lo-fi sounds and doing interesting things like he'd have a cassette tape on a cassette tape recorder on a microphone stand.
Okay.
And he'd be recording my voice into that cassette tape recorder and then looping it on into the desk, into the board and doing all kinds of weird things, sticking stuff from digital to analog and back to digital again. And he was really interested in the kind of sonic aspects of the material and miking up instruments in weird ways. Like even my acoustic guitar he had going through an old Laney amp and miking up the amp, and blending the sound of the acoustic guitar going through an amp and being mic'd up with the actual acoustic guitar itself. Just really interesting things. And he had really interesting ideas about songs too. He was, even though he doesn't. I mean, if he wasn't the generous guy he is, he'd probably be getting a writing credit because the songs all went in and came out half the length, that they'd been. There's a lot of really short songs on that album. You don't find many short songs on albums before or since, but he made me cut them down, and oh my God, it's killing your darlings,
Yeah.
But, and I don't know if it's necessary always, right? But I'm glad that he cut all the songs down to their essence, which I really like, and I really liked the way that album worked as an album too.
You mentioned him doing some interesting things with your vocals. Is that where the that Sweetness and Pain triptych kind of came from? Because there's a really cool quality to your vocals.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know what he did, but he did. I think that might have been one of the ones where he used the cassette tape recorder. It
kind of sounds like there's a little hiss in it that's really wild. And I love the song Yellowstone, which you also redid for the new album. Is that has to be a real story? Is that something that happened?
My son can't sleep. He's 10 years old. He's scared that Yellowstone will blow, and when it does, it could set off a mighty chain reaction. Volcanoes round the world exploding, darkened skies and lava flowing. His mind won't.
Yeah, that is something that happens. It starts at my son can't sleep. He's 10 years old, and he was 10 years old when I wrote that song. He's 8 now. But yeah, he was having trouble sleeping and just lying awake and worrying about stuff. So I said to him, well, the thing to do is write down everything you're worried about. Just write it down on pieces of paper, and then your worries can be on the paper. They don't have to rattle around in your head anymore, and you might start sleeping better. And he did, and he started sleeping better. But of course, I had to go and look at the pieces of paper. He was worried about all kinds of things. But one of the things he was worried about was the volcano underneath Yellowstone. There's this underground volcano under Yellowstone, and there was this, I mean, God, we've got so many more things to worry about now. Yeah. But at the time, back in 2017 or whatever it was, the thing, a lot of people were worried about this, the fact that this underground volcano could erupt at some point, and that it would set off a big chain reaction of volcanoes all around the globe and, trigger the apocalypse.
I remember that, yeah.
And that was a real worry for him. And I thought about that, and I thought it's a really strong image, and I thought it also struck me as a really strong metaphor. I think nearly all of the songs I write are just start out as images and become metaphors. That's kind of what drives me. And so I was thinking about this, this simmering underground volcano that you're treading carefully over and worrying that it's going to erupt at any moment. That life is like that a lot, and so that's what I wrote that song about.
The next album, If We Dig Any Deeper, It Could Get Dangerous. There's definitely some more aggressive guitar in it, some distortion. Yeah. Was there any pushback from fans when that album came out, or was everybody basically like, this is fine?
I got that more with Walking Into White, actually. A lot of my fans hated Walking Into White. They didn't like the... Wow. Oh, in fact, it got quite an indifferent review in one folk publication, wow. which had given a rave reviews to all my previous albums, but they really didn't like Walking Into White,
Oh, man.
Yeah, so although then conversely, loads of people loved Walking Into White, and it got nominated for Album of the Year and all kinds of things. So
you can't please everybody.
Yeah. You got to please yourself, really.
Exactly.
But I'm really happy with that album, and I'm also happy with it If We Dig Any Deeper. But the big change with If We Dig Any Deeper, It Could Get Dangerous is Michael Chapman produced it, and he got me playing electric guitar, which Adam hadn't done. Adam played electric guitar himself on Walking Into White, but it was Michael who put an electric guitar in my hands and said, "Play this."
Wow.
And it was just a real revelation, because it would never have occurred to me to play electric guitar. I thought I was all about acoustic guitars and the beautiful sound produced by wood and, hollowness in wood and, acoustics and string. But it was only when I picked up the electric guitar and started playing it and twiddling things and looking at the different sounds I could make and then putting it through pedals. Oh my God, that I was like, this is a whole new sonic world that I can take advantage of. I can make lots of different sounds. This is like broadening my horizons, and I still love acoustic guitar as well. And but I wrote a bunch of stuff on electric for that album, and then I also got my courage up. He said, actually, it was Martin Stansbury, my sound engineer and manager, who also produced the new album, who suggested I do something on piano. He said, well, you're doing electric guitar. Why don't you do something on piano? And so I started playing. I did one track on keyboard on that album, and then I've done 2 for the new album. So yeah, it's nice to be able to kind of grow and expand and develop as an artist, and to not be doing the same thing over and over again,
There's a boy in the garden with a shovel and a spade. He's gonna dig himself a hole, it's the biggest ever made. Boy in the garden, shovel and spade, biggest hole ever made. I say, I know you're having fun, I don't want to make a fuss, but if you dig any deeper, it could get dangerous.
One of the other changes is the artwork. Your first 4 albums has this big, beautiful, bright artwork, and then If We Dig Any Deeper has more sparse artworks, more sketch-like. Was that all part of the change from going from acoustic to electric? I mean, you're just kind of breaking free from some of what you were doing in the past?
Well, my first 4 albums had artwork by a really good friend of mine, Mary Guinan, who's also done all of my graphic design, you know? And I sent her my ideas for If We Dig Any Deeper, It Could Get Dangerous. And she was really struggling with it. She was like, I can't think of anything. And nothing I do makes me happy. And I'm not really feeling the artwork for this one. You know, wow. She had kind of strong images in her head for the other ones. And so I was doodling, and the first line of the title track is "There's a boy in the garden with a shovel and a spade," and I just did a doodle of a shovel and a spade, and then I stuck some guitar strings on the spade, and I thought, that's a pretty cool doodle. And I sent to Mary, and I said, "What do you think about just having this at the album cover?" And she said, "Yes, great," And she said, "Can you like handwrite the album title as well? I think it would be really nice to have the handwritten album title beside your doodled artwork. Have it really be homemade." And so I did that, and that kind of became my new logo, if you like, Yeah, and I guess, and then for the new album, I not only did my own cover artwork, I also did like little doodles, basically, to go with each of the songs,
yes.
Which been kind of the sort of covers of the videos, and they're also in the album artwork as well, in the CD booklet and the LP sleeve.
Yeah, so, I did get a chance to see some of those, and I love how they match up with the song titles. It's great.
Yeah, I just did kind of little doodles inspired by each of the song titles, and I don't pretend to be an artist as such, but I like drawing and doodling, and I guess it sort of brings an extra level of authenticity to the whole thing, and it puts me in a whole lovely line of artists who've done their own album artwork, like Joni Mitchell and Cat Stevens,
Bob Dylan.
People I grew up listening to.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
Before we get into the new album, I have one question that I did see something in it. I have no idea what this is, so I was wondering if you could explain it for me. I saw a line that says your diverse work has also explored 3-part round singing. What is 3-part round singing?
That's just the little canon in Derby Cathedral, In Derby, because it's a 3-part round is row, row, row your boat, It's anything where people sing in canon,
In Derby Cathedral I found my last home, my soul free to roam, my name carved in stone. Listen to the bells ringing out for me. In Derby Cathedral I found my last home, my soul free to roam, my name carved in stone. My soul free to roam, ringing out, my name carved in stone.
Okay.
Like the same thing, and another voice comes in, another voice comes in. And I guess because of growing up with the choir, I kind of liked that form of singing. And then Martin, my wonderful sound engineer, figured out a way using a tap delay that I could do, that I could sing a 3-part round with myself on stage live. So I did. Awesome. So yeah, I re-record. I did in Derby Cathedral for the new album as well.
Yeah.
Because on the original recording on The Plum Tree and the Rose, it was all I overdubbed.
Right.
Whereas when I can now do the song live without overdubbing by just using that tap delay to have my voice repeat. It's always walking a tightrope, because if you don't get the tempo right the first time, it's a disaster. But it's fun.
That brings us to the new album, St. Buryan Sessions. How did this come about? I mean, it's a new album, it's live, it's just you. How did you pick the songs for this? Because most of it is songs from your prior albums. There's a few new tracks, but how did you choose the songs?
They were all songs that I felt like the songs had kind of grown and developed and maybe changed in some way since I originally recorded them. And I'd been playing them live, and they'd kind of developed as I'd been playing them live. And I wanted to capture them as they were live, because, I mean, not that I disavow, I love the studio versions of all the songs too,
Yeah.
but all the songs have become kind of different animals, over the course of performing them live. And I'd really wanted for a long time to make a live album, because I'd felt like there's something in a live performance that you just never quite get in studio. There's a certain, I don't know, energy or magic that you get performing live. And I wanted to capture that. And I'd been thinking vaguely about doing it for a long time. And then, of course, COVID hit, and I was on tour in Germany and had to rush home. Before the borders closed, it was all very touch and go.
That's
wild. Getting one of the last ferries and got home, and it was like, oh, okay, what do I do now? And I thought maybe this is, to be honest, I really didn't feel like writing. I was pretty devastated by the whole COVID thing, and I really didn't feel like writing new material. I just wasn't in the mood to do that. And I thought, what can I do? And I thought, maybe I can make that a live album, and I don't have to write new material. I can revisit the old material that's grown and changed and developed, and record those songs as they are now, and they'll be new and different. And then also do a couple of new covers, that I haven't recorded before. So, and I wanted to also capture it on video. I just as a record of the performances, of the live performances, and also because to give me just some content to put out there while I couldn't tour, to kind of keep in touch with, I hate to use the word fans,
right?
Keep in touch with people who like my music.
Yeah. Sarah McQuaid enthusiasts.
Yeah. Fans. Sarah McQuaid connoisseurs, aficionados. But
and foodies, because of your chocolate cinnamon smoked voice.
Yeah, exactly. So I did a crowdfunder, which is something I've never done before, but I didn't see any way of getting the money together, and people were wonderful and generous and gave the money. And it also enabled me to give some work to people who were also thrown out of work by COVID. Yeah. People like Martin, my sound engineer, who not only lost all his work with me, but he'd also been working a lot in places, in for festivals and, running sound in big theaters and things like that.
Yeah.
And, all that was gone as well. So, I went into this beautiful old medieval church just up the road from where I live.
Okay.
It's my local church, and it's parts of it date back to the 11th century, and most of it's 15th century.
Wow.
And it's just a stunning space. And I thought, well, we can't have an audience, obviously. So if I'm going to perform, since I can't have an audience, I need something else to give the performance that energy and that quality, and I thought, if I go into a really magical space, and it's also just visually beautiful. So if I'm going to video it, I don't want just a black box, I want something for people to look at besides me, And so it was lovely. I had two cameramen, Morgan Lewis, who actually authored the video, and it was the kind of director of the shoot, and then another guy called John Crooks, who's worked a lot. There's a big outdoor concert series here in Cornwall called the Eden Sessions, which are always televised, and John had worked as a cameraman on that. So what he didn't know about doing live camera work for live performances, he's done all kinds of famous artists, Amy Winehouse, and all kinds of big stars, So I had this really crack team, to do the recording and the videoing, and all I had to do was get up and play and sing and just give it the best performance I could live, solo, as I would be doing if I were in concert. Because that's another thing that, my albums, I always had guests on my albums, because I just think it's nice to have guests, and it makes it interesting. But there was no album where people would hear a song as they would hear it live, because I always perform solo. Right. Partly because I just can't afford to bring a band on the road with me. It's expensive enough as is. Yeah. And also because I feel like I really love, part of what I love about performing is the connection you get with the audience, the kind of the kind of back and forth that you get with an audience. And I don't feel like you get that to the same extent when you've got a band on stage, because the energy there's a band on stage, it's going back and forth between you and the other musicians. And that's lovely and magical too. But there's a connection that you get with the audience as a solo performer that I think you really have to be a solo performer to get. So I do love performing solo, and I wanted to, again, just have a record of literally, a record of what I do, and just commit that to audio and video.
One of my favorite tracks on it is One Sparrow Down.
There's a sparrow at my window and he's spoiling for a fight. He's attacking his reflection and he's puffing out with pride. He doesn't see the cat who's watching from the windowsill inside. She stares at him intently with her gorgeous golden eyes while he flaps and struts and chatters in a futile exercise.
I love the way that changed from the album to the live version, and I love the little meow at the end.
Yeah. So for the album, I had a fantastic percussionist, a guy called Roger Luxton, and he did percussion on all of the tracks on that album, and nearly all. There's a few tracks that wouldn't have percussion, but most of them do. And on that particular track, One Sparrow Down, he just went to town and he played everything from a wine bottle to a radiator to an oven grill to all kinds of crazy things, just found objects, using them to make sounds. And so it's got this wild percussion part. And then we also recorded, there was a pheasant kind of wandering around beside the studio, and Martin went out with the microphone and recorded the pheasant, and I actually recorded my cat meowing at home with an iPhone. But then I really wanted to do the song live in my live set, and obviously I couldn't have Roger, couldn't have the pheasant, couldn't have the cat. And so I'd always wanted to learn to play the drums, and always one of those long-held ambitions that I never quite got to. And so I said to Roger, could you give me is there some really basic drum, like just a single drum that I can play? And he said, yeah, get yourself a floor tom, and I'll teach you how to play a riff on it. And so I got myself a lovely old vintage 1970s floor tom by Premier Olympic, and Roger came over to the house and he said, so all you have to do is just do this dum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum, and can you do that? And I was like, yeah, actually, I can do. So yeah, I'd like to learn how to play the drums a little better at some point. Roger was always going to give me some more lessons, but he never did. But I can play that, and so and I didn't have obviously the cat or the pheasant either, And so when I do it. Audience, I tend to get the audience involved and to get them making random animal noises, and we get all kinds of weird stuff going on.
That's
in percussion.
Awesome.
But I didn't have any of that in the church, so I just did my own percussion, and I just threw in the at the end. And
I love that. I love the album because as a whole, it's got this like sparse but still like really rich quality. It reminds me a lot of some of the great folk albums from the 70s, people like Jim Croce, Carole King, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell. It's got that quality. You don't get albums like that anymore. You don't hear things like that. And that's one of the things that really sets it apart for me from a lot of the stuff that I've been hearing lately.
I hear the wolf at the door. I've seen his face before. He's hungry and I'm tired. Can't keep him out much more.
Yeah, I think people like Carole King and Jim Croce, they were kind of writing songs with their eye on kind of immortality, if you know what I mean. They weren't just writing songs for themselves. They were just writing songs, and they were writing songs as songs. I mean, in fact, obviously Carole King never thought of performing her own songs until relatively late in her career,
Yeah.
And I guess I always felt like I wanted to write, to try to aspire anyway to write in that tradition. I don't know, my songs, whether they reach that quality, but that's what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for immortality. I'd like other people to want to sing my songs, and I write them with a view to maybe other people might want to sing them someday. And a few other people have, not as many as I'd like,
Well,
but,
let's see if it gets some more going.
Will.
Well, I just love the sonic quality of the album. It reminds me a lot of the albums that I grew up on, that my parents would play, that 70s singer-songwriter album. There's just I can't even really put it into words, the sound. It's a warmth and but a sparseness at the same time of the album. And since it's just you, it makes sense, but you don't hear that very often anymore. The albums aren't released like that anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of, I don't know, things have to move on and everything like that. And maybe I'm a bit of a throwback. That's okay. I like being this kind of throwback. And if other people like it too, that's even better,
And there's the version of the last song is beautiful. That's heartbreaking to me.
Listen to my mother as she played her old guitar. I'd say, do Froggy went a courting for the next one. She'd say, all right, but now this has to be the last song. Are you still?
And then there's the two new covers, which, as an aside, we can go into as much or as little of that as you want right now. We don't have to talk too much about that if it's too soon.
Well, I recorded. It was really lovely, and actually, in view of what's happened yesterday, I'm just so glad that it happened.
Yeah.
That Andrew Chapman, Michael Chapman's wife, got in touch with me around the time I was getting ready to record the St. Buryan sessions, and she said she was putting together a special album for his 80th birthday, consisting of songs that he had written, performed by all kinds of, well-known artists that he'd worked with over the years, people like Lucinda Williams and Steve Gunn and Kurt Weill, Meg Baird, loads of people, all much cooler and much more well-known than I am. So I was really kind of humbled and honored to be asked to contribute a song. And she said, what song would you like to do so I can, hold it for you and make sure nobody else is recording it? And I said, could I do Rabbit Hills? Because it's always been one of my favorite songs in the world. I just love, even before I knew Michael, I loved that song.
Yeah.
It's a long, long road from here down to the sea, but it's the only thing that keeps your love with me. Where the water meets the trees and the long grass turns to sand, the bluebirds skip the waves, stones like jewels in your hand, or is it mine?
And it's just something. And again, it's got that timeless quality, which all of Michael's songs have that timeless quality. I would put him in the same category as Carole King and James Taylor and all those songwriters who just wrote songs that are timeless and beautiful, and that transcend any individual performer. And I thought, well, I'll kill two birds with one stone. Since I'm going into this beautiful space where there happens to be a beautiful grand piano, and I don't really want to try and make a recording of a Michael Chapman song and play guitar,
right? Because
his guitar is so iconic. I'm not even going to touch it. I'm just going to write a piano arrangement and play this beautiful grand piano.
Yeah.
And I asked her if it was okay if I put it on the new album, as well as giving it to her to use on the CD, which is just it wasn't publicly released or anything. Right. It's just this CD she made for his 80th birthday. And
wow.
And she said yes, and I'm just so glad. And she and Michael have just both been such good friends to me, and I've still got his guitar on loan. I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Yeah.
buy it or something. I don't want to give it back.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful guitar, but anyway, so yeah, I recorded Rabbit Hills, and then there's another cover that I recorded that I haven't recorded before, Autumn Leaves, which is a real classic.
Yes.
Classic song. I'd been doing it in my live set for a while, and people kept saying, have you recorded that? And I was like, okay, maybe it's about time for me to do that.
Well,
I get to sing in French.
Yeah. I love the album. It's like I said, it's just so warm and beautiful, and it's got a quality that you don't hear very often anymore. Have you gotten back to writing any originals since we're kind of in the a year and a half out of the COVID era?
I've got some half-written songs. I've got a lot of ideas for songs.
Okay.
I've got a phone voice memos thing full of song ideas. I just put down another one a couple of weeks ago. I was sound checking for a gig and started playing a riff on the guitar, and then quickly recorded it, which is what I do,
Yeah.
And I've got some lyrics as well that I'm kind of. But I find with my albums, the last two albums, both If We Dig Any Deeper and Walking Into White, both of those albums, the songs had a really long gestation. I was so busy touring, I didn't have time to finish songs. And so I was accumulating song ideas for about 2 years before I made both albums. And in both cases, I had to sit down and go, right, okay, studio time is booked. I better hurry up and finish these songs. And then at that point, I had like, I don't know, 50 or 60 song ideas.
Wow.
To go through and think, okay, what's going to be? And some of them I'd start writing the song and go, yeah, no, this isn't working. I got to leave it to one side. But at the end of the day, I wound up with a collection of songs that really hung together and that were all written kind of with reference to each other, where, I'd maybe start a particular rhythm and go, no, that sounds too much like the rhythm of this other song. I don't want two songs with that rhythm on the album,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So I kind of really liked that way of working. So that I'm kind of working on working that way a little bit again, although on the other hand, Martin has suggested I make some EPs for a change,
Oh.
Another going backwards thing, and with the convention is to make EPs and then make an album. I've made a bunch of albums, so I think I'm about ready for an EP now. So I might do that. We'll see.
Well, that's the way COVID's making things go. People are, over the past year and a half, it's just been a bunch of singles coming out.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, maybe it is,
Where can people follow you online? I know there's a website, is there a social media presence where they can?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And how can they order the album?
Okay, social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and all of the links for that are on sarahmcquaid.com, which is my main website. And there's also a link there to my YouTube channel, which has videos of most of the tracks, and will eventually have videos of all of them.
Awesome.
And I'm just kind of dripping them out there, And then the album is available for pre-order on Bandcamp, and I've got all kinds of interesting stuff because it's not only going to be on CD. I'm doing a limited edition double LP in nice gatefold sleeve, all individually numbered on the outside.
Nice.
It's pretty cool. It has to be a double LP because it's too much music to fit on a single LP.
I like hearing that.
Yeah, so it's expensive to make. I'm not going to make any. That's okay. I love vinyl.
Yeah.
It's blue vinyl as well. Really cool. Blue vinyl.
That's awesome.
And so I've got that, and I've also got all kinds of stuff like T-shirts and tote bags. I kind of went crazy because I had all this artwork. I thought I may as well put this artwork on stuff. So the tote bags and I did tea towels as well, dish towels, which have all of the individual song doodles on them as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's kind of cool. Oh, and nifty little USB sticks, which have the song videos on them.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I like that.
Yeah. And engraved. They're wooden USB sticks engraved with my artwork.
Oh, man. You've really taken to this whole art thing.
Oh, I have, yeah. I know it's all very commercial, but it's all handcrafted, homemade. Not homemade, but home drawn. it over to a manufacturer. I mean, the T-shirts and the tote bags and the details are all proper silk screen. There's none of your digital printing for me. It's all it's real silk screen printing on nice cotton, 100% cotton.
Oh, well, that's good. I was afraid you were going to be hand drawing every tote bag. That'd be a little much.
No, but it is proper silk screen, so it should come out looking really nice, I think.
Well, thank you so much for spending so much time with you. I've kept you for a while. It's been wonderful getting to know you and learning about all of the music and what's behind it all. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's lovely to chat to you.
Charlie's gone home now. I drove him downtown and dropped him off at the station and sweeping the floors now, changing the sheets and organizing the kitchen. And the house is so quiet, it feels so strange. Only 1 hour, everything's changed. It seems so empty. I feel so alone. It was a party that lasted a week and a half. We played music together and we drank and we laughed, and now it's over. 'Cause Charlie's gone.